Hi, welcome to Fat Girls Coping. I am Annette Richmond, the creator of Fat Girls Traveling, and I am here with a couple members, friends of the Fat Girls Traveling community to have a talk that I think is really important, but can be kind of difficult to have. We're going to be talking about interracial relationships. And I think that right now, with everything happening in the world, it can be a little challenging to be in an interracial relationship right now. Not that it wasn't challenging before, but I think that with a lot of the anti-racism work that so many of us are doing, a lot of our, biases are being exposed, unconscious and conscious. We're having to deal with a lot of feedback and input and opinions from friends and family members that maybe we weren't expecting to have to sort or unpack. And so, we are basically, I am going to be checking in with some ladies who are members of the community and just talking about relationships and what they're going through right now. I would love for you ladies to just introduce yourselves individually in whatever order you wish.
Yeah, all of my social media is at Nurse Murderer. My name's Jordan. I'm a bisexual, cis, het, female woman in a interracial relationship with a Black male.
Hi everyone, my name is Nana. I'm at Nana the TCK on Instagram. I'm currently a PhD student studying cancer biology, and I am in an interracial relationship with a white man from America, if that counts for anything.
I'll go. I'm Sam. You can find me on social media at Call Me Adventurous, and I am a Black woman in a relationship with a white male. And that's that's the basic gist of that.
My name is Alysse, Dalessandro, Santiago. I am the blogger and influencer behind Ready to Stare. I'm at Ready to Stare all over the internet, as well as readytostare.com. I am a white, queer, cisgender woman, and I am married to a Black transgender man.
Well, thank you for introducing yourselves. I think that this is a great opportunity to hear from different people. Obviously, we're all experiencing different things right now, but I think that it is a good opportunity, especially with June being I believe it was the 50th anniversary of the Loving case, which made it legal to be in an interracial relationship. So I wanted to have this conversation this month, but especially with everything going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think there's just kind of this racial awakening in our country specifically, but I think globally this is happening, and that's another reason why I was excited to bring Nana into the conversation, because she is in Africa, and then her partner is based in America and is American. I just wanted to have a well-rounded conversation and hear from everyone in different perspectives. We did have a kind of little kiki before this to kind of figure out what topics were going to be the strongest, and to make sure that we could figure out some actionable takeaways for the people that are going to be watching this. But the first thing I wanted to kind of jump into was the expectations and some of the issues that we are dealing with around expectation. And I know for me, not even as someone that is in a relationship right now, because your girl's single as fuck, I will keep saying that in every interview until I find a partner. I'm single right now, but even just my friends, my non-POC friends or other friends who are in interracial relationships, a lot of us are figuring out how to navigate our expectations of each other. And some of my friends haven't spoken up about anything, maybe they had a Black square on their social media, or maybe they didn't. A lot of my friends are international, and so they might not be impacted as greatly by the topics that are happening in America. But it has definitely made me kind of like think twice about the people that I am calling a friend. And it's definitely had me kind of deleting and blocking people based on either their silence or on some of the topics and things that they have been sharing. And so I kind of want to jump into this with the relationship, but also with, friendships, love relationships and non-love relationships, basically. How are your expectations being met by people's either silence or, solidarity with what's going on right now in the country?
Well, I guess I will go ahead and start. For me personally, I'll start off with like my friendships. Funnily enough, like I don't really have a lot of white friends, but the ones that I do have been so amazing. As soon as the Black Lives Matter protest started, they got on the phone and were like messaging me. And my friends are all over, like my two really, really close white friends. One is in Australia and the other one is in South Korea right now. So immediately they got in touch and, they're asking me, how am I feeling? If they ever needed to talk to me, they were there. So friendship wise, it's been really great. But in terms of like, I guess like expectations, I think with my partner, I think I had really high expectations because he's already done a lot of the work to unpack, white supremacy and to be anti-racist because of like the work that he does for his job. Before we got together, he had already done the work in being anti-racist. So I had this expectation that, he'd be there and be like, hey, this sucks. And that didn't happen. And I was like, wait, you're supposed to call me and you're supposed to check on me and see if I'm okay. And I think that letdown was, really, really hard compared to other people who haven't gotten in touch, because I think I had such a high expectation. And then when that wasn't met, it was just like such a huge, huge disappointment.
I guess I can go. In terms of expectations, I think I'm only like friends on Facebook with people who I, agree with. I've curated my friends list over the years, and just not even added people that I figured probably wouldn't. And in that case, I just mean like people from my hometown or whatever. Like moving forward in my life, I've only really met people who are also kind of into the same things as I am, which involve like travel and inclusivity and all that stuff. So I haven't really had any like loss of expectations there. With my partner, he's been super supportive and everything. So everything I could need throughout this time. So that's been great too. And then in terms of family expectations, my family is interesting. I'm like a transracial adoptee. So my parents are white and I've always known that they were a little racist. Yeah, they don't think they are, but they are. So I've had to deal with a lot of stuff growing up in terms of like them making me question my identity and everything. So it wasn't surprising at all for all of this to happen now and them to like still call Black Lives Matter a terrorist group and all this stuff. So in that case, I'm not surprised. I just wish they had been a little bit more open to learning more instead of just reading the same things they always do, which is like right-wing media. So, but like my family is super important to me, so I just try to avoid the topic when I'm with them. My partner is like who I spend the majority of my time with, and he's on board with everything. So in that way, it's super helpful.
As far as expectations, I did, and Annette, you may have even seen, I called people out on Facebook, sort of saying, not only have you not checked in on my partner, but you also haven't checked in on me, and you're actively posting recipes or whatever the hell, and not, even reaching out to people that you actually know that are being affected. So, I did have some weeding out of people, and that it did include some family members. But like others have already said, like I already sort of had like a forewarning of these people, like especially now in this current day, there's a lot of hindsight for me where I'm like, oh shit, they were super fucking racist when I was growing up, but because I was white in an all white space, it didn't click to me until now that I'm out of that space and in a different, you know, understanding of the world. I'm like, wow, that aunt was fucking racist. So it's okay that they're gone from my life. And I think as far as my partner goes, I mean, obviously, you know, he's the one that is most affected out of what is happening right now. So he's very aware, and I'm just worried that I'm not meeting his expectations of being a good partner in this situation as the white woman, you know. So it's sort of a weird thing again, which I guess is the whole point of this thing, is I get angry that my friends don't check on me because my partner is Black, but then on the flip side, I'm like, am I even doing a good job checking on my own partner? So it's yeah, it's heavy.
Yeah, I think for me, I didn't really have any expectations because it affects me indirectly. And I think I should have probably had more stricter expectations, and that I should have probably checked in with my husband and made sure I knew what he expected from the people that are in his life because of me. And so like, what level of communication did he want from them? You know, they were obviously concerned, but a lot of people were coming to me instead of going directly to him. And so I was sort of that intermediary. So, you know, just kind of, I think the most important thing I've learned about expectations is that you can't really know what they are unless you communicate them. And so that's like the most important thing that I've learned, is that you have to just, it may be an uncomfortable conversation, but something as simple as me asking my husband, how are you doing, knowing I'm asking how are you doing in the context of the world and everything that's going on, he's thinking I'm ignoring what's going on by not saying, hey, how are you doing given everything that's going on? So there's a mismatch in communication there where I think I'm asking and he thinks I'm not asking, but we're really trying to have the same conversation. So I think it's just a matter of, you know, communicating and making sure that you're on the same page with your partner in terms of expectations, not only between the two of you, but then also for the people that are in your partner's life because of you, and how you can help manage those expectations.
Those are such great points, all of you, and especially like what you just said, Alysse. Yes, communicating specifically when you're in a relationship and your families are gonna, you know, be connected because of that relationship and all of those things. Communicating those expectations, you know, is very important. And I also just want to mention that, you know, before we even started having this conversation, Jordan and Alysse had both kind of expressed, you know, some uncomfortable feelings about centering themselves as white women in this conversation. And so I do want to just verbalize it, you know, that I am creating this safe space for both Black women and white women to openly discuss, you know, what's going on in their interracial relationships. I think that this is going to be an interesting learning opportunity for many of us. And I do think that this whole experience is going to be trying for a lot of us. And so we need to be able to openly communicate with each other. And after we had our little kiki, you know, a week ago or so, I feel like we've been chatting and like sharing links and stuff in our little group thread. And so I think just even starting that conversation is very therapeutic. And that is what I hope that this conversation is, just the beginning for us to start looking at, you know, our love relationships and our friendships under, you know, through this lens as well as race, and to address the, you know, the similarities and the differences that we have, to not ignore them. And so to continue kind of on this whole thing with expectations, I definitely am one of those people who is generally like against having any like unknown expectations, or like not expressing my expectations and then giving people an opportunity to like meet them or not. I'm usually like, oh, well, did you communicate those expectations? But in certain type of shit that's been going on recently, it hasn't really been a conversation for me. I just will block somebody, or, you know what I mean, block and delete, because for some of these, I'll put in, you know, casual air quotes friendships. A lot of them are, you know, high school friends or middle school friends that I haven't seen in 10 or 20 years. And we utilize social media just as kind of a vehicle to share pictures and, you know, as me as a writer, articles and stuff about myself. But this whole, you know, this whole movement has kind of uncovered a lot of, you know, people that I didn't know were problematic in my life. And so for me, the way that I've been reacting to that has been kind of a mix of trying to call people in and educate them and kind of express to them why what they said or what they're standing up against is offensive to me as a Black person, as someone that they knew and someone that they grew up with. Or it can just be like, fuck you, block you. You know what I mean? And so I would love to hear any of the kind of situational things that you ladies have been going through, where either you've had to call someone in or block someone, as a means to kind of express your expectations to that person and kind of through everything that we're dealing with right now socially.
I've been lucky enough that I guess the people that the algorithm show on my feed haven't really been people that have been saying, you know, anything that warrants a block and delete. I guess maybe that just means most of my friends are on the same wavelength that I'm on, or I've already deleted people who think that way, or people who think that way are being very silent right now. So I'm not really seeing anything that's, you know, aggravating and requires a block and delete. I haven't really, but interestingly enough, the only people that I've seen that require a block and delete are Black people. So it's like, I can't talk to you because you should know. So I don't know. So that's the only thing about the blocking and deleting that I've seen so far.
That's interesting. Have any of you like experienced anything with like family members of your partners or anything like that, like having to block or unfollow anyone who, you know, is not necessarily closely related to you, but related to you through your relationship or through some other friendship?
I did have to, okay, on that vein, it wasn't, so it was my partner's cousin's Facebook, and she was kind of saying that as a Christian, like what helped her understand, I guess, the Black Lives Matter was the whole, you know, when Jesus was with 100 sheep and then one of the sheep goes missing and then, you know, the 99 were fine. Basically, she used that quote as like to explain to her fellow Christians why BLM is a thing. And someone in the comments, you know, was brought up Black on Black crime, the myth of Black on Black crime, which was really infuriating. And then the discussion that was happening under there. And I was like, I can't let this go by without me saying something. So I literally messaged my partner. I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm about to go in on this comment. So if your cousin says anything, I'm just giving you a heads up. He's like, okay, fine, go ahead. So I just kind of like, I was polite as I could be in that moment, but I was polite and I just corrected them. And I was like, look, this is a myth. Like, you don't hear about white on white crime. Like, why is that? So yeah, that has happened, but it wasn't really, it was kind of adjacent, but not like directly in that sense.
Yeah, like for me, I have a really close friend that I grew up with, and she is now a sheriff. And she's also a mother of 3. And I think her youngest is just under 1 or just recently turned 1. And so I'm friends with her on social, and I was friends with her partner. They're both POC. And so this kind of lends itself to what you were saying, Nana. He's posting Blue Lives Matter shit. You know what I mean? Because she is a police officer. And he is basically centering himself and his family because she's a police officer, but also hasn't said anything about Black Lives Matter. So to me, that aligns itself with Blue Lives Matter because she chose to be a police officer, whereas Black people don't choose to be Black. You know what I mean? And the fact that he is so freely and often, you know, sharing that kind of Blue Lives Matter content and making it about, you know, him and his family, when that's something that she chose to do instead of actually acknowledging what the issue was, that definitely caused me to block him, you know. A similar thing to where like my cousin who is Black is in an interracial relationship, and his fiance is also pregnant. She wrote this whole monologue about how her fiance is a Black man and a police officer, and how, you know, in her, you know, she's carrying a Black man, and so therefore she has a right to speak on these things. And she basically ended her whole monologue with Blue Lives Matter. And so she was blocked as well. And so these are the kind of things that I'm personally coming up against with, you know, people of color who aren't necessarily Black, or people that I know that are in interracial relationships that are finding opportunities to center themselves instead of finding opportunity to like learn more about the issue. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to ask you ladies if you had been experiencing anything similar.
I'll jump in really quick because what I have experienced is sort of the opposite, and that my sister-in-law called me in and she was like, you know, this does affect you and you need to put yourself into it more. You know, I've always thought that allyship was, you know, not centering myself in any way. And she was like, you know, you're not just like a white person, you are a white person married to a Black trans man, and that is important. So I think it's interesting, you know, that I was like going so far beyond to be like, let me not put myself into this at all. And then my sister-in-law had to be like, no, actually, like, you do need to somehow put yourself into this, because there are other people in interrelationships who don't know how to talk about it, and they're looking to you to kind of know how they should talk about it. So I think it's interesting because it can go, you know, I think a lot of white people, myself included, like, we don't want to say the wrong thing. And so sometimes, yeah, you just need someone in your life to be like, it's okay, you can say that. You know, I could call you in and like, it's okay, you could say that, and we're gonna fuck up. You know, I said this when we had our talk before, but yeah, you're gonna fuck up, and just know that, you know, that's gonna happen, and you're gonna learn. And if someone corrects you, say thank you. I was grateful that my sister-in-law called me in and said, no, this is personal to you, and you need to share that. So I was grateful for her. So it's a blessing if someone is willing to do that.
I definitely agree. And in both of those instances, like that's the part of the discussion too. It's like in both of those instances, I could have called those people in, but at this point in my life, with all the information that I share and with those people considering me a friend, I don't think that it's worth the work or emotional labor on my part. But there is a range. Obviously, you know, you're married to a Black man. So this is not something, you know what I mean, that you can just unfollow or unfriend. But these people are kind of like secondary characters in my life. They're partners with friends of mine or a cousin of mine. And the only interaction that I have with them is generally on social media. And as Sam was saying before, it's like we kind of have to curate our social media to people who not necessarily agree with us or align with us on every topic, but specifically in this instance, people that don't trigger us. Because for me as a Black woman, like, I don't need to be going on my social media and being triggered every day by some Blue Lives Matter shit that someone that claims to love me is posting, you know? And so, yeah. What about, I remember from our little conversation that we had before, we had kind of a conversation about empathy and kind of expecting others to be empathetic about situations that they don't really know about. And sometimes people not being able to have that that kind of emotional education to know how to do that. I don't know if that's something that you ladies want to speak about, but that will kind of lead us into this whole like not knowing what to say kind of thing. So not saying the wrong thing or not saying anything, and kind of that whole being in limbo and like state of inaction from being afraid to say the wrong thing.
I mean, because my situation's weird with my family, it is hard to know exactly what to say because these are the people who like saved me from a really bad situation and like raised me and have like actually given me a good life other than like the traumatic racial identity stuff, which I've like, as I've gotten older, I've been able to like work through and like be proud of who I am finally. But it's hard, like knowing, like how to empathize with someone of their generation because they were born in the early 40s. They like my dad was straight up like raised in like racist coal mining towns in Pennsylvania, and like my mom was raised by a racist father, but she's always telling me how like she like never was racist and had to tell him not to say the N-word and had to teach my dad how to not say the N-word and stuff like that. So she thinks she's like a social justice warrior just for like telling a couple white people not to say the N-word. But then she'll say other shit and I'm like, and like I like never really talk to her about this stuff because I get really emotional about those kind of subjects because like I'm an empath and I'm like highly sensitive person and like she's said things that like it breaks my heart that my like mother would say. So I've really tried to not approach a lot of stuff, but I did like end up having a conversation with her sort of a couple weeks ago where we were talking about other things and it sort of led into that, and just like I was hoping we could like reach some sort of middle ground, but she still was just like going off about how Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group and like Trump isn't racist, it's actually liberals who are racist and like all this stuff, and it's hard to empathize with someone who's like all about that, but at the same time I'm not going to cut my parents out of my life because I got really close to doing that after the election when they voted for Trump, and I like confronted them about it and it like was very difficult. So it's a weird balance of like finding that empathy and wanting to like teach, but just knowing they're so like staunchly firm in their beliefs at like 80 years old, so they're not really gonna change even though they have like Black children. So I just find comfort in my partner instead because he's super progressive and forward thinking, and his family is as well. So like if I go over to like his dad's place, I know like I'm not gonna have to like fight to like tell them about stuff, like because they're already like at least for the most part on top of knowing like what's what. But it's hard to be empathetic with people you like. For one, like if you just want to like go off at someone on Facebook or something, you have like that barrier, but like I don't interact with my parents through Facebook, I interact with them in person. So it's a difficult sort of like they're the only people in my life who I disagree with like on everything, and they're the people who are like most important to me. So I can't just go and like cut them out of my life or block them but I do on I don't really use Facebook anymore, but on Facebook I did make it so like they can't see my posts. They're still my friends, but they can't see my posts, which helped a lot a few years ago when I was posting a bunch of like social justice stuff like all the time, and then they like couldn't see it because I knew they would probably call me and then have to like talk about it or something. So that's how I like self-cared myself in that situation. But now I just like I don't really post on Facebook. I'll like scroll through to see what's up, but I only really follow people who like agree with me. So my feed's mostly been like very supportive stuff. So
we were talking about like cultural differences in relationships specifically, because I know for me, or even friendships, I know for me as a Black woman, I grew up in a home where my mom speaks very loudly to the point where a normal person would be like, why are you always yelling at me? You know what I mean? Like, even when she is yelling at me, I'll be like, why are you yelling at me? And she's like, I'm not yelling at you. But she like is for sure yelling. You know what I mean? And so for me, growing up in that environment, I know that I speak loudly. And to some people, my normal speaking voice could be perceived as yelling. But obviously, if I am emotional about something or passionate about something, my passionate voice could also come across as yelling. And so that has been a cultural issue that I've had to deal with in the interracial relationships that I've been in, just because that is something that, like, communication is such a major key of relationships. And so that is one of those things that, like, if you change your tone, that could trigger something, that could trigger a fight or a disagreement, when the change of your tone didn't really signify any like change in attitude. That's just the way that you talk potentially, or you know what I mean? So I wanted to ask you ladies if there were any kind of cultural things that you're dealing with in your relationship, or kind of hurdles that you've had to get over or through, based on, you know, being in an interracial relationship. And
I'm going to say that for me, I think one cultural thing is that I think, like, in my family, we're very verbal, we're very open about a lot of things. You know, we just talk about, I guess, like personal content, personal space. That's not really a concept in my house. Like, you know, we answer each other's phones, we pick, you know, we're very open. So I guess in me trying to vet the people that are being brought into my life through my partner's family, and I'm like, okay, so what does your family think about Black Lives Matter? What does your family, you know, think about the president? What does your family think about these things? Like, you know, and he's honestly like, I don't know. We don't talk about those things. And for me, it's really hard to fathom, how can you not discuss such important issues? You know, I can't, like in my family, I know, I hear my dad screaming at the TV all the time. So I know, you know, what his thoughts are. I know, you know, what his beliefs are. So it's kind of hard to navigate to a certain extent, that how do I regulate who is being brought into my life if, you know, the person that's bringing them doesn't know what their opinions are on certain things.
For me, my relationships, cultural differences have, I think the one that we are still currently navigating is around pets. He, as a Black man, says that in his culture, pets are very different. They serve a purpose. They don't get on the bed. They don't come in the couch. They don't, like, there's a lot of rules around the pets. And before he and I were dating, I had 2 cats that I had since they were like, one I actually bottle fed from a day old. So it was like a very serious relationship with this one particular cat. And it was okay when we were dating, but then when we moved in, it was a lot. And the one, one has since passed away because they are older too. So my last cat, that Bazillion, who is still here with us, she actually turned 17 in October, but she's like she's not dying. Like, she's, you know what I mean? Like, this is so fucked up to say. So she could live till like she's 22 or something. So there's some, I don't know, a little bit, because I'm like, she's old, like, let her back in the bedroom, like that kind of thing, you know? I'm like, let's let her have a nice retirement. But he still is like, not on the couch, not on the bed. But she can be on the couch with me if he's not on the couch. It's the whole thing. So that's something that has been, you know, something that we're navigating. Something that I think we have successfully navigated is cleaning, which I know Alysse and I had talked about as well, not only in the pre-chat session that we did, but her and I actually communicated afterwards as well. Cleaning was a big cultural difference. And like, I think Alysse will probably say as well, it ended up that Ramon does all the cleaning. That's just, we've been together 5 years now. He does all the cleaning. It just is the way that it has to be, because I can't meet his expectations of how things should be cleaned. So he cleans. And I feel like a child when I say that. Like, it's like, well, I did it wrong so many times, I don't have to do it anymore. But it's really just the best thing for our relationship. It really is.
Yeah, I can echo. We have the exact same cultural differences. Pets was a thing in our relationship, as well as cleaning. And again, it was just, I've never lived before moving in with my husband. I had never lived with another partner. And there are things that you learn from, even though I've dated outside my race almost exclusively before, living with someone is totally different. And those things like pets and cleaning come up, and you are just like, oh, this is not how I was taught to do it. And I feel like I should know how to do it your way. But yeah, it's just a matter of finding what's right for your relationship, which is, if it can't be done in the exact way that he wants, then maybe you do other things instead, because yeah, it can be a constant fight for sure. Or the dishes, we're just gonna compromise, and I'm gonna use paper plates, like, because I don't want to even worry about the fact that for some reason I can't like seem to notice, you know, and like that's my privilege. Like I had a dishwasher, like a dishwasher, like until I moved in with my husband. And so in my whole adult life, I've never really had to wash dishes by hand, which is such a privilege, I realize. And yeah, so this is one reason why we have, you know, a difference in that ability. And so, yeah, it's just like things like that. Also different communication styles. His family's I'm Italian, so my family, both of our families are loud, but the way we communicate is different. His family is very direct, and he is as well. And my family is very like, kind of skirts around the point, kind of passive aggressive, you know, and so those are, it's a little bit, it feels abrupt for me to be talked to in a way that's really direct. And for him, it feels very hurtful to be talked to in a way that's passive aggressive. So the other one is like just doing what we know without realizing that like what we know can be hurtful to the other one. So I think every couple like who has, that's, you know, in our case, it's cultural, it's how we were raised, but any couple with different communication styles has to kind of figure out how to not be like this, and how to be like, okay, I'm really upset and I'm crying, and I know you're not going to hear me when I'm crying, so I'm going to take some time so I can communicate in a way that you can hear easier. So yeah, I mean, there's the things like the dishes, and then there's big things like, you don't want to talk to me when I'm crying because it's hard for you to understand what I'm saying. Like, so yeah, there's a lot of cultural differences. And I think every relationship, but particularly interracial relationships, you really have to work together to understand each other, because your lived experiences in certain places are not going to overlap.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing those things. And I think that when we were having our little kind of like girl chat, we kind of ended that whole thing with kind of saying that like, just because things are different doesn't mean that it's bad. You know, just because we communicate differently, just because we were raised differently, just because we're different races, doesn't mean that it's bad, doesn't mean that we can't grow and learn and change, or come up with a plan like Jordan and Ramon, who have their cleaning system, and she, you know, does the things that she's excelling at, and he does the things that he excels at. And so, yeah, it's a compromise, and it's a compromise with friendships and relationships and family members and all of those things. And so I think that conversation just kind of pinpointed some kind of like specific things that we're all dealing with, and ways that we're kind of navigating them. Before we wrap up, I wanted to kind of just chat with you ladies with about the takeaways, and just get some input or feedback or stories that you had on any of the takeaways that we decided on. And the first one was intent versus impact. And I think a lot of us have been hearing that comparison lately. And I think that it kind of boils down the whole issue that we're dealing with. Sometimes the intent doesn't matter if the impact is going to be deadly, you know? And so, yeah, I just want to figure out and hear from you ladies about how this comparison or how this term kind of impacts you.
I actually learned the phrase, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. Some friends and I decided to try and run a feminist group, an intersectional feminist group on Facebook. Don't ever fucking do that. No matter who tells you that is a good idea, don't do it. The amount of infighting, and also it was like, minutes after Trump won. So, oh my goodness. That being said, that is when I really learned that, and I'm grateful to the people who have taught me that. And what's funny is, obviously, in current day, I still do my best to practice it, but I find that I'm saying it more than it's being said to me, which is a good thing, but also I'm very willing to accept, like, when it is said to me, yes, you're right, I fucked up. But I think in today's, I'm saying it often to like my family and to my coworkers. I find that I'm correcting people more than I ever have. And I don't know if that is, sometimes I feel like it's working and that the person is like, says, thank you, I'm glad, but then other times it's met, of course, with immediate, like, white woman stance of like, well, I would never, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, blah, 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 blah. So I don't know what my point is, but that phrase, I'm grateful to know it, and I recognize when it is said to me and do my best to do better, which I don't think I showed you guys I don't even know if you can see it. First tattoo I ever got says do better. And that is like, I don't know. I think it's perfect because I'm trying every flipping day to do better. But I also like that if I'm like yelling at someone, it's showing them to do better too. Thank you.
I love a good tattoo. Sorry to interrupt. I love a good tattoo that has like a double meaning.
I think like there's been like a recent thing in sort of like my friend circle that definitely has to do with like intent versus impact. There was this like theater company started by someone who in college I've always thought he was kind of shady, but whatever. I've moved away since, like, mostly I have been traveling around the world, whatever. My partner's still been working with this guy from a distance on stuff like submitting plays or whatever. But I've always been like, bruh, he's pretty shady, but whatever. I don't know if you like want to get your show put up and he's willing to put it up, cool. Recently he got basically like called out and taken down over the fact that like for the past few years he's been like claiming his theater company is super diverse and he like loves everyone and he wants inclusivity, he wants it to be 50% like people of color, all this stuff, but like behind closed doors all the people that were involved who were women or people of color were like not being listened to, they were like being shut down, and he was like very egotistical and like, no, he's like half Mexican, I guess, but he's white passing. Like I wouldn't have known he was half Mexican at all. Basically, yeah, we're calling him out for like not actually walking the walk. Like if you're going to claim you're diverse, you actually have to not just be diverse, but listen to diverse people. So his intent was to be like showy about how much he cared about that stuff. But his impact was that anyone who actually got brought on was like abused and not actually listened to. And basically a bunch of people called him out in the last week and he dissolved the theater company. And I told my partner, I was like, yeah, I've been telling you for years, I got bad vibes from him. Like he always picked you and his other white friends for like the plays, because I submitted a play the very first time he opened it up, and the play had like an interracial relationship aspect. It was supposed to be like very Black Mirror-y. I worked on it for ages. He didn't choose my play, but he chose my partner's play, who only worked on it for like half an hour and sent it in. So it was very like that's always been like his dynamic with people. So just the mere fact that he got called out and then stepped down so quickly and like shut down the theater company proves that, you know, he knew he did wrong. But yeah, it's like, I can't with people who don't, you know, walk their talk, talk their walk, whatever, you like that kind of thing. Like, don't say you care about diversity, you like want it to be a part of like what you go forward in life with, and then just like not actually stick to that, because you're actually burning more bridges by saying you care and then you know, ruining those people's lives that you bring on, because then it makes it harder for them to trust going forward other white people who are like, oh, we actually care. So like, I think now is a good time to kind of call out the like white liberal people who do think they're doing right, but they're definitely not. They have to be told. I mean, there's different levels of calling people out. I mean, if they've been doing shit for years, then yeah, you should probably like make it a bigger thing. But if it's someone who like in their day-to-day life claims they're like a good person and they care and they really don't, you know, you just have to you know, say things. I hadn't worked with him directly, so I wasn't one of the people who like called him out, but part of me wishes I did, because it would have been so juicy to be a part of that group who like took him down basically. But yeah, your impact has, or your intent has to like actually cause a good impact, not like a negative one just because you're egotistical and want to seem like a good person.
I think that so often with intent and white people, it can, and myself included, it like, you know, oh, I didn't mean it that way, or you could be so quick to be defensive because you know how you intended it to come off. But at the end of the day, what intent versus impact has come to mean for me, and how I'm using it with other people in my life, is it really doesn't matter that you were well-intentioned because you did harm to someone, or you hurt someone because you didn't think about it. And it's that, why didn't you think about it, where I think the learning can really happen. Was it your privilege? Was it just being thoughtless, being careless? Like, why didn't you think about how it could hurt somebody? And that's where I think like the learning can occur. Like I said, we're gonna mess up in this process of learning and doing better. No, I don't have one, but learning and doing better, we're gonna mess up. So I think instead of being defensive, and I totally understand that gut reaction of, no, but I have a good heart, I didn't mean it. Okay, we know you didn't mean it, but between how you meant it and hurting someone, there's an opportunity for you to sit there, be uncomfortable, and learn, and like just learn and process. And, you know, I think we want these instant apologies and reactions from people, which, like, yes, they messed up and they do have to make an apology, but like they have to sit in that discomfort and kind of like learn, you know, and like they didn't realize, at least with the intent versus impact example, my understanding is like they didn't realize what the impact was. So like they need some time to sort of process it. So correct me if I'm wrong on that at all, but that's kind of how I have interpreted it and been using it in my life.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the correct way to perceive it. You know, people need to take the time to sit in their learning to figure out, you know, why their intent isn't as important as their impact. But I do think that to a certain degree, there has been like, not just like learning on a national level, there's been learning on a global level about some of these actions, like specifically these Karens that we keep seeing. I'm here in the Bay Area, and there was this woman, there was an Asian man who was spray painting Black Lives Matter on his own property. A white woman and her husband approach, and they, you know, tell him that they understand why he's writing it, but he shouldn't be defacing other people's property, and that they know the people that live at that house, and they're going to call the police. And this man, knowing that he's the person that lives in that house and has lived in that house for 18 years, he's like, go ahead and call the police. And in this situation, there's been Amy Cooper, there's been tons of video and evidence that it is not okay to call the police on a person of color just because you think they might be doing something illegal. If you don't have proof, then go on about your day. So basically, this woman calls the police come, they know that it's this man's property, they don't say anything to him, they keep pushing. This lady and her husband walk back by the house later, where this man is inside the house, now waving at them to show them like, hi, you called the police on the person that owns this house. Luckily, when they approached him, he had his camera or his phone out, he videoed the whole thing. This woman has since dissolved her entire company. This man has since been fired from the law firm that he has worked at for over a decade. And so this is a situation where I don't think that those people needed time to sit in their learnings. You know what I mean? They full on well knew, you know what I mean? And the guy even said, oh, so you're going to call the police on a person of color? How do you know this isn't my home? You know what I mean? He was challenging them every single step of the way, and still they decided to call the police on this man, and then their lives were ruined. And I think good for him. So this is, just another example of intent versus impact. I think every situation is going to be on a case-by-case basis, especially when you're dealing with people that you love and are friends and family. It's going to be a completely different situation. But I do think that this term and this comparison, intent versus impact, is something that we can use to kind of call each other in and to ask people to actually look at what's the important takeaway. Another important takeaway that I want to cover in this conversation is the giving of grace. I think that Alysse said it multiple times. We're gonna fuck up. This is a lot of new stuff that we don't know, that we're learning. I'm currently listening to How to Be an Anti-Racist on Audible. So I'm learning a ton of shit about being anti-racist as a Black person. You know what I mean? So as all humans on this planet, we're all learning a lot about this stuff. And I think it's important to not only give ourselves grace, but also to give others grace, specifically our partners or friends, families, people in our life who don't necessarily know how to navigate this. But it's also important that we stand up for ourselves when people reveal who they truly are. So I would love for you ladies to kind of chime in on any time or situation where you've had to either give grace or find grace within yourself for, being in a stage of learning right now.
Well, for me, in terms of like I guess the lesson of grace is one that you taught me, Annette, because I actually brought up this issue, I guess, of like my partner not meeting my expectations in that moment. And you were like, you need to give him grace. It's not something that I really thought about because, like you said, everybody is learning right now and everybody is learning at a different pace. So obviously I have given him grace because he deserves it. But I think it's also important to note that even though we should be giving grace, I think you have to give grace to people who are actively doing the work, because some people will be like, let's have a conversation. I want to hear your side, but they're only doing it because they want to argue and not because they're genuinely interested in learning. So I think we also have to be really discerning and like very definitive on who deserves the grace that we give.
Yeah, I would just want to follow that up and say I totally agree with that, and that like when I'm talking about giving space to learn, it's definitely not people who are strangers to you, or not, like, you have to know that they really did intend not to do harm, and that requires some type of interpersonal knowledge with them. So I think that that's really important, that you do not owe a stranger who is racist towards you grace, obviously. Like, I want to be clear, I'm not saying that at all. And, right now, I feel like any anger that my husband has towards white people, I want him to process that, and I understand. And you just have to give people the space to be angry and to just be frustrated, because it is frustrating. And so I think for me, I don't expect any grace. Like, I should have learned these things I'm learning now. Some of them I should have already learned them. So I don't really expect any grace, but I definitely feel like it's important for me to understand that however my husband wants to process is fine. And I just have to be there to support him and communicate how I can be supportive and know that like I might not be the person that he wants to support him right now. And that's like really, really hard, but that's the truth. And yeah, so I think just for me, it's about, yeah, knowing what you can do and where you really just need to step back.
And in a way though, Alysse, I really do think that is you giving yourself grace to know that like you're not going to be able to meet every one of your husband's needs right now. And even you just saying like, oh, I'm going to fuck up, I'm going to mess up. That's kind of acknowledging that you're not perfect. And I think the work from there is kind of like forgiving yourself for not being perfect, forgiving yourself for not knowing what to say or not being the person that he might feel like he can go to for every single thing right now because of cultural differences or because sometimes I just feel like fuck white people. You know what I mean? Sorry, not sorry. I don't need to apologize for my feelings. But yeah, so I think that is a part of, you know, giving yourself grace is just acknowledging that like, you know, sometimes I'm going to be wrong. Sometimes I'm not going to be the right person to deal with the situation. And that is okay. So yeah, other than that, I wanted to talk about, yeah, just wrap it up with the whole, like, people are gonna fuck up part. I think that that is kind of the biggest takeaway of this thing is that, you know, no one is perfect and we're gonna make mistakes along the way. And figuring out what people are gonna be worth staying by their side through the mistakes, you know, during the success and the failures, you know. And so, yeah, how has that kind of shown itself to you ladies through this time? Like people fucking up or you fucking up and kind of navigating that whole thing?
That's actually something that I'm trying to figure out right now. My tying all of this together is the people who I do need to give grace to versus the people that I don't. And as a white person, I feel like I should be responsible for giving grace to everyone because I should take that emotional energy on of trying to educate, not emotional, but you know, it is emotional. But obviously doing it in spaces where I am, like, for instance, at work, if I call it out and I go to my white superior and I say what you just sent out to the company, this actually happened. I'm like, this is horrible, tone deaf, like hot mess. Let me guide you. I can give you resources, like whatever you need, but you need to correct what just went out. And in that, I actually started sort of this whole thing with a bunch of other colleagues where now we're creating like an inclusion committee and all this stuff is happening out of it, which is awesome. But something that was told to me by my Black colleagues who I don't know, I don't have that interpersonal relationship with, was they were sort of offended that I didn't come to them and ask for what should be said when I first called it out, basically. So instead of, where in my head I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to bother them, and also I don't know them, right? So it's not like it's my best friend where I can be like, hey, let me help you with this. This is someone I don't know at all. We're all remote at this point. We've just hired like 50 new employees that I don't even know. But long story short, I learned that sometimes even though I think I'm helping, I'm not. So I need to figure out where it is appropriate for me to educate and be the voice, and where it's appropriate for me to be like, this is wrong, but here, let's talk to these people and talk about why it is wrong. So that's something I'm trying to figure out right now. And I think in that involves giving people grace and also myself. So that's my tying it all together.
Yeah, and just my feedback from that situation, just from what you shared just now, like I would think that if you did bring something up and then say like, we should also ask, you know, I'm not a person of color. We should be asking the people of color in this business or in this department about this. But as someone who is an ally to that community, I want to say this. Obviously, people of color, please correct me if I'm wrong. So it's not only you standing up, but it's also you kind of like passing the mic. Yeah. And so I think that as a Black person, that is kind of more of what I would have liked to see. I don't work with you. I don't know the situation, but just as a quick kind of feedback for that situation, for anyone who's watching this, who might want to know what would be the course of action that maybe those people had in mind. That's kind of the first thing that came into mind for me, was like, obviously as an ally, stand up, but also if there's people in the business that can speak for that community and are a part of that community, amplify those voices. Does anyone else want to share, you know, any fuck ups that they've done? I personally fucked up as an ally to the LGBT community recently because, so what happened was I wrote an article about a trans traveler, and then I used the wrong pronoun. But before the article went to print, I contacted the editor. And so when it printed in the magazine, it was edited. They took the unedited content and put it up on their website for Pride Month. And since I had written this thing over a year ago, I'm reading this article like, holy shit, did I just like use the wrong pronouns? Like, I know better than this. But since they had, you know, shared the article, I apologized publicly for using the wrong pronoun. I reached out to this editor, asked her to change it. And she said, oh, you know what? We actually didn't edit it after you gave us that correction. So it's like, we're gonna step in it as allies. You know what I mean? Like, now if I were writing that article, I probably wouldn't fuck up the pronouns. I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't, you know, because I have more practice using that language. But yeah, like I fucked up, and you have to own up to it, and you have to figure out what you need to do to change it and to make it better, you know?
And just to piggyback off that as well, like that actually happened to me a few days ago. I fucked up, and it's actually even slightly a little bit more embarrassing because I guess it's within the fat advocacy, within like the body positivity space. I didn't mean to, but somebody called me out for body shaming. I thought I was just stating a fact, but I got called out for body shaming. And I went through the emotions. I was like, well, is it really body shaming? Like, I was just saying a fact. Like, I didn't mean it that way. Like, I went through the whole gamut of emotions in my head, but I was like, no, hold on. Like, somebody told you, like, you may not, like, you have to think about that may not have been your intent, but that was the impact. So as soon as she called me out, I like went through those gamut of emotions, and I was like, no, you know what? You were wrong. And they were right. And you just have to admit that you messed up. Like, you're human. It's okay. Give yourself some grace. And in the comment, I was like, right after she called me out, I was like, thank you for calling me out. I am so sorry. That was not my intent, but I will do better. So, I mean, you know, you've got to own up to your mistakes, even within a space where you should know better. You'll make mistakes.
For me, one of the things that happened was I really felt like, you know, I've always read that, you know, the burden of education of white people for becoming anti-racist should not be on Black people. So I understand that as a concept. So I'm trying to educate myself, and my husband is like, but why aren't you talking to me about it? And I was like, well, you know, the burden of education. And I'm saying, and he was like, but I'm your husband. Like, I want to talk about this with you, and you sound like an allyship 101 textbook right now. And like, you have a Black person in your house, in your life, like that can contextualize what's going on from a personal perspective. Talk to me. And I think we can get, just like Jordan said, we can get so caught up in like what is the right thing to do as an ally that we can lose the personal aspects. Like, yes, this is something we need to do from like an educational academic perspective, but like we're still talking about interpersonal relationships between people. And I think that's where allies can really fuck up, is being like, but this book I said told me to do this. And it's like, yeah, but Black people are not a monolith. And so you need to really make sure that you're getting a lot of perspectives, and especially talking to the people in your life. And so that's how I feel like I fucked up, by just being like, it said this, so I didn't want to do, so I did this, you know. And it's like, but make it personal, and make sure that you're communicating like with the people in your life who are willing to do that communication, and have told you that they want to communicate with you about it. So don't put that burden on. I'm not saying that I still stand by it. Don't put that burden on people, especially people you don't know. But you know, you can have conversations, and just, I think an easy way to start those conversations is to say, what's your capacity right now for this conversation? Do you have the capacity to talk about XYZ? And I appreciate when people do that for me about, you know, LGBTQ issues. I've had a lot of people be like, I genuinely don't know what transgender means. Okay, I have the capacity to educate you, and I can. So I think, and same with like pronouns. If you ever want to talk to me about that, I can help you, you know, like, so I think it's just a matter of asking, do you have the capacity? And then they can say yes or no, and you have to be fine with either answer. But don't just like make assumptions based on what you're reading to become an educated ally. Like, still have conversations and communicate.
Well, I've never done anything wrong in my life ever, so I can't really, no. I mean, as a person who was raised by a white family, I like really didn't have any sort of like knowledge of Black culture other than like media and stuff growing up. And it took me a long time of like overcoming a lot of the self-hate of myself, and just like messing up in that regards in interactions with like other Black people, because like I used to proudly call myself an Oreo and stuff like that, and Black people would like call me the fuck out for it. Like the first time I got a weave, I made a joke about it, and my half brother, who I met via Facebook years ago, was like, you're making like Black women look bad right now because of like the joke you're making. And it was like really hard to hear all those things from other Black people. So for like a long time, I still distanced myself from Black people to try to, I don't know, just be different. And it took a lot of years of like work of being called out by Black people to like finally get to a place where I like could be proud of myself and knew what I should and shouldn't be doing to like uplift the community and myself and everything. But even to this day, like still sometimes, I mean, yeah, Black people aren't a monolith. People still have varying different opinions about stuff, and you're always still going to come up against someone who you're like, what? Like, I thought we were both Black. Like, what's going on here? But like, you kind of have to, yeah, listen to like what their reasonings are on stuff, and just kind of, yeah, talk about stuff. And that's why I stay out of a lot of conversations, just because I don't really like confrontation at all. And it makes me uncomfortable, but I am like open and willing to like learn about stuff. And yeah, it's because, yeah, it's hard also when you present as Black or whatever, but you weren't necessarily raised in the culture and stuff. So like me being in an interracial relationship is funny, because I was raised ethnically white, so I'm not really in an interracial relationship culture-wise, just like literally skin-wise. But as I've like gained more proudness for like what I look like and my people and everything, you know, I've like dived more in depth to like what it means to be Black, which again, there is not really a meaning to it. It's just like certain things I should like try to avoid, or like I've been like, my sister grew up in the same situation as me, obviously, and I've been really trying to like instill in her all the values like I didn't get from my parents to help her grow also as a Black woman. And I'm really proud of her, like, because she's catching on to it a lot younger than I did, because I think she has like me to kind of help guide her through. But there's like ignorant stuff she's said before that I had to kind of talk her through, just to like make sure when she goes out into the real world eventually that she's not, you know, messing up too much with other Black people who are still kind of confused about like how we were raised and everything. So yeah, it's a weird situation, but yeah, I'm always open to like learning and fixing my mistakes and everything. And I think because I'm an empath, that's why I'm like open to, like, if someone calls me out, obviously I'd probably be like sad about it, but I'm always open to like understanding what the reasonings are behind all of it.
Wow. Well, I just think that you ladies are incredible. Sam, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think that all of you have such unique situations and such unique lived experiences. And that's why I really wanted to, like, I'm so lucky to have all of you ladies, like, in my friend group, first of all, but also as a part of Fat Girls Traveling. This kind of just goes to show, like, how much diversity there is just even in our small group. But this was such a great conversation. I really think that we were able to see so many different perspectives. I would love for you ladies just to let people know where they can follow you before we go. And if there's anything else that you want to share or any words of encouragement or anything that you want to say, feel free to say those things.
Okay, so again, my name's Jordan. You can follow me anywhere, all social media. It's the same, at Nurse Murderer, all together. Basically, I just want to thank everyone. I think that I was, like Annette said, super hesitant to partake in this because I didn't want it to be any sort of situation where I was centering myself as a white woman. But even our pre-call, our warm-up call that we had last week was awesome, and I'm super grateful and thankful that I did this, and I think y'all are great, and I'm excited for this community, for us to keep growing and networking and just helping each other, because obviously the world is fucking horrendous and we need all the support that we can get. So yeah, so thanks.
You can follow me at Call Me Adventurous on Instagram. And yeah, it's awesome to like actually have to talk about this with people and like vent a little, just like discuss different people's perspectives, and also just to remember that things are changing like every day. New terms are coming up every day. Like pronouns wasn't even really a thing until I feel like 5 years ago that people actually took it seriously. And that was something I had to like learn about and adjust to. And like, I mean, I grew up religious, so like I had a lot of people in church telling me all sorts of things, but always like questioned why they were saying that sort of stuff. And then over time I had to like learn for myself how to like have an open mind and get out of that space. And I think that's the good thing about our generation is we did grow up like with the internet and more access to like education, so we can educate ourselves every day. And when people like just want you to like care about something that's important to them in terms of like their race, gender, sexuality, anything, it's like the best thing is just to be open about that. Why wouldn't you be open about learning about it? So yeah, just like keep staying open-minded and being willing to learn new things. And yeah, because the world's constantly changing, so it's all good to like change with it in a good way.
All right, you guys can follow me at Nana the TCK. TCK stands for Third Culture Kid. And just to like piggyback off what Sam said, like Third Culture Kid is somebody who grew up outside of their parents' culture. So like I kind of grew up everywhere. So I've met a lot of different people in walks of life. And I've always thought that like I was really understanding and really open, and like, you know, it was impossible for me to like do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing, because I knew a lot of people and I know a lot of things, but like I said in the story earlier, like I've even made mistakes in my own community where I should know better. So, you know, you still have to know that everybody is growing. Even you yourself, you're growing, even if you think you've learned everything. Like that's definitely impossible. So like everybody's been saying already, like, have grace, be patient with yourself, have grace with the people that love you and are close to you. And yeah, stay safe, guys.
My name is Alysse. You can follow me everywhere at Ready to Stare, and that's Ready T-O Stare, and stare like this. And I guess my best takeaway is saying thank you to everybody for being here and showing up authentically. I think this can be a really uncomfortable conversation, and as Jordan said, I also didn't want to come here and center myself and my whiteness in any way, but I think that this was productive, and I think that, like, even after the last time we talked, I know I came away feeling like I'm not the only one that is going through this. And so I think that, you know, the more that you listen to people, you can learn and just really empathize with what they're going through. So I think my best advice to everyone is just listen when you're given opportunities to learn, and be open, be patient with yourself, and be kind to yourself, for sure. Just echoing what Nana said.
Well, I just want to thank all of you beautiful, brilliant ladies for spending some time with me on this Sunday afternoon to talk about your life and your interracial loves. I got so much from this conversation. I hope others do too. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much.